He never believed in love. But if he didn't marry and secure an heir, his empire would collapse. His rival was waiting, ready to take everything he'd built. Han Jae-min came to the marriage auction with one plan: pick the ugliest bride, someone obedient, someone he could control, and someone who wouldn't challenge him. She stepped onto the stage. The veil fell. He lifted it, and froze. 200 powerful elites watched, but no one understood why the most feared man alive had just gone cold. Everyone in the room was left with one question: what did he see under that veil that made him freeze like he'd seen a ghost? And how could a single bride shock a man who thought he controlled everything? Han Jae-min stopped breathing. Not from fear. Fear had left him at 22, the night he buried what remained of his father. He froze because the woman on that platform turned, slowly, deliberately, and looked directly at him. Half a second before the chandelier light caught her face, his body locked. The orchestra went quiet. Champagne glasses stopped clinking. 200 of the wealthiest Korean-American families in Southern California froze in their silken secrets, sensing something shifted, though none could name what. He couldn't move. Han Jae-min, the man who silenced senators with a single call. The man whose name moved money across 3 continents. He had walked into this Newport Coast estate tonight with one cold, calculated intention: purchase the most forgettable woman in the room, sign a contract, return to his empire undisturbed. He couldn't move. Because he had seen those eyes before. 26 years ago. A courthouse hallway in downtown Los Angeles. The worst night of his life, and hers. Simone Brooks had not wanted to turn around. On the drive up Pacific Coast Highway, with the black Pacific invisible beneath the sky, she told herself she would keep her eyes forward. Spine straight. Expression clean. Emotions locked. She would endure the stairs. Collect what her brother needed. Leave. She had not planned for him. The Meridian Estate ballroom was built to intimidate. 40-foot ceilings draped in cream and gold. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars hanging like frozen explosions above white Italian marble. Outside, the Pacific sat dark and enormous, indifferent. Simone felt the room's temperature drop the moment her name was announced. She heard it, the pause. 200 people recalibrated. She was not what they expected. Not Korean. Not part of their inner circle. Not draped in diamonds or carrying a famous name. She was a black woman in a midnight blue gown, standing alone under a chandelier worth more than her first car. Every pair of eyes told her she did not belong. Park Sung-ho, seated 3 chairs left of center, let a thin smile cross his face. He leaned toward the man beside him, said something low. A few heads turned. Someone coughed, the kind of cough that isn't really a cough. Simone kept walking. She reached the platform. 4 women had stood there before, smiling, performing eligibility. She did not smile. She scanned the room like a jury box, reading faces, mapping exits, calculating enemies. Then she found him. He sat apart. Space formed around him like it does around dangerous things. Broad shoulders. Dark tuxedo. Salt and pepper hair. Eyes black and still, fixed on her like she was a document he had to authenticate. He looked shaken. Simone's breath caught. She knew that face. Not from a photo. Not from the news. From a hallway. Courthouse. Downtown Los Angeles. A younger version of that jaw, that stillness, standing 20 feet from her mother, who had trembled so badly her heels clicked against the tile floor. Her chest tightened. Why is he here? Why does he look at her like that? The bidding opened. Silence swallowed the room. No hand moved. No card lifted. The auctioneer cleared his throat. Park's smile widened. Then one finger rose. Slow. Certain. Devastating. I will take her. The room erupted. Park's smile vanished. Simone stood perfectly still, heart hammering, thinking one thing only: this man did not choose her because she was forgettable. He chose her because he remembered her. What would you do if the most dangerous man alive just claimed you in a room full of enemies? Would you see strategy, or obsession? The contract hit the table at 7:43 in the morning. Simone had not slept. Not because she was afraid, she had made peace with the decision somewhere around the third hour of lying on the ceiling of her hotel room in Corona del Mar, staring up at nothing. She hadn't slept because she was working. Yellow legal pad. 3 pens. Her late mother's voice in the back of her skull, steady as a metronome: read everything. Trust nothing. Sign nothing you didn't write yourself. The attorney across the table, a thin man named Harlan Wu in a suit that cost more than Simone's monthly rent, slid the document toward her with 2 fingers, like it was already settled. She picked it up. Turned to page 4. Started writing in the margins. Harlan's face shifted. Ms. Brooks, this is a standard heritage alliance. It isn't standard. She flipped to page 9 without looking up. Clause 14 gives your client discretionary authority over all financial allocations tied to my dowry contribution. I'm striking that. She drew a clean line through it. Replacing it with joint fiduciary oversight and a charitable distribution rider, 15% of the dowry value directed annually to a non-profit of my designation. She set the pen down. I'll need that retyped before I initial anything. Silence. From the far end of the table, Han Jae-min said nothing. He sat with one arm resting across the back of his chair, watching her the way a person watches something they were not prepared for. Not angry. Not amused. Something quieter than both. He had expected paperwork to be a formality. She was treating it like a deposition. Harlan looked at Jae-min. Jae-min gave the smallest nod. Harlan gathered the papers and left the room without another word. 48 hours later, the revised contract came back. Every edit Simone had made was honored. Every clause she had inserted remained intact, including one buried in the addendum on page 22 that gave her the legal right to audit any household financial account she was listed on as a spouse. She had not told anyone about that clause. She had not expected anyone to notice. That night, at 2 in the morning, Jae-min sat alone in his home office overlooking the Pacific, reading her edits for the 3rd time. A glass of whiskey sat untouched to his right. His jaw was tight. Not from anger. From something that felt, uncomfortably, like respect. Park Sung-ho had called him 3 times that day. He had not picked up until the 3rd. She is not what she appears to be, Park said, his voice carrying the particular smoothness of a man who believed he was always the smartest person on the call. Her background, the law firm, the blacklisting, there are gaps, Jae-min, things that don't line up. Everything lines up, Jae-min said quietly. You're just not used to a woman who reads the fine print. He ended the call. But he did not stop thinking about what Park had said. Simone moved into the Newport Coast mansion 4 days after the signing. She arrived with 2 suitcases, a box of legal files, and an expression that made the security team at the front gate step back slightly without understanding why. The house was not a home. It was a system. Bulletproof glass on every exterior window. Cameras covering every angle of every room except the private quarters. Armed guards rotating in 12-hour shifts along the perimeter. The Pacific crashed against the cliffs below like it was trying to warn her about something. She didn't flinch. She walked the full perimeter herself on the first afternoon, hands in her coat pockets, taking mental notes. One of the guards, a broad man named Rel who had been with Jae-min for 11 years, watched her from a distance and said nothing. Later, he told another guard quietly, "She's not scared of this place. She's studying it." He wasn't wrong. Simone was not here only to survive. She was here because 26 years of unanswered questions had led her through a courthouse, through a law career, through financial ruin, and finally through a bidding room in Newport Coast, directly to the one man whose world was connected to the night her mother never came home. She found him in the kitchen at 7 that evening. He was standing at the counter with a cup of coffee, reading something on his phone. He looked, for one unguarded second, like a regular person. She crossed her arms. "Did your father order my mother's death?" The coffee cup lowered. The room went very still. He looked at her for a long moment. His expression did not break, but something behind it shifted, like weight redistributing. "No," he said. She held his gaze. "That's not a full answer." He said nothing else. And the silence that followed told her more than a full sentence could have, because it wasn't the silence of a man who didn't know. It was the silence of a man who knew exactly, and was not yet ready to say it out loud. Would you trust a man who answered your hardest question with silence? Stay close. Because the truth about who really ordered that murder 26 years ago is about to surface, and it will change everything you think you know about this story. The windshield exploded inward before anyone heard the shot. Simone felt the impact in her teeth, a concussive slam that threw her hard against the armored door before her brain had even registered what was happening. The SUV lurched violently left. Tires screamed against asphalt. Outside, the Pacific Coast Highway blurred into a streak of black and white, and then another impact hit, this time from behind, a second vehicle driving them toward the guardrail at full speed. Her ears were ringing. Something warm was running down her left temple. The convoy had been 3 vehicles. Clean formation. Evening run from a private meeting in Laguna Beach back to Newport Coast, 30 minutes, a route Jamin's security team used twice a week. Someone had known that. The front vehicle was already sideways across the highway, steam rising from its hood. The rear vehicle had stopped moving entirely. Simone's SUV, the middle car, took another hit on the passenger side, and this time glass rained across her lap like ice. She grabbed the door handle on instinct. Jamin's hand caught her wrist. Down. One word. No panic in it. Gunfire cracked from outside, close, sharp, not random. These were not warning shots. The attackers knew what they were doing, and they were doing it fast. Simone pressed low against the seat, heart slamming so hard she could feel it in her fingertips. The smell hit her next, gunpowder and burning rubber and something metallic she didn't want to name. Through the shattered window, she caught a glimpse of the ocean below the cliffs, black and enormous and completely indifferent. She thought, this is how it ends. On a highway. In a car. Next to a man whose name I only learned 3 weeks ago. Then Jamin moved. He pulled her across the seat and put his body between her and the shattered window just as another shot hit the door panel, and she heard him exhale. Sharp. Involuntary. The sound a person makes when pain arrives faster than expected. You're hit. Her voice came out flat. Trained. It's a graze. His jaw was tight. Let me see it. Simone. I said let me see it. He stopped arguing. The bullet had caught him along the left side, a deep graze below the ribs that was bleeding faster than he wanted her to know. She pressed her palm against it using the fabric of her own coat. His breath came out controlled, measured, the breathing of a man who had trained himself not to react to pain the way normal people do. He watched her hands. They were not shaking. That surprised him more than the bullet had. Outside, his security team was returning fire. The exchange lasted 40 seconds, it felt like 40 minutes, and then tires screamed north on the highway and the shooting stopped. Silence dropped over the scene like a curtain. Distant sirens began to build somewhere toward Laguna. Simone kept pressure on his wound. She didn't speak. Neither did he. The only sound was the ocean, the fading sirens, and both of them breathing. After a long moment, he said it quietly, almost to himself. "You are not collateral." She looked up at him. His eyes were steady, darker than the water below the cliffs, and something in them had shifted, not softened exactly, but opened. Like a room that had been locked for a long time and someone had finally turned the key. She didn't respond. She just held the pressure and held his gaze and didn't look away. Later, inside the mansion, wound cleaned, stitched by a private physician who asked no questions, Rel placed a photograph on the table in front of Jae-min. A partial plate number. A phone signal traced to a burner. 2 guard rotations leaked in the 4 days before the attack. Inside information. The route. The timing. The vehicle order. Someone close had talked. Rel said Park Sung-ho's name quietly. Once. Jae-min stared at the photograph for a long time. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't pound the table. He simply said, "Say nothing publicly. Handle it quietly." Rel nodded and left the room. Simone stood in the doorway. She had heard everything. She watched Jae-min sit alone at that table, the lamp casting a long shadow behind him, his hand resting flat against the photograph, and she thought about the fact that he had taken a bullet meant for her. A man who barely knew her name 3 weeks ago. A man whose world she had entered with the sole intention of finding answers about her mother's death. A man who, she was beginning to understand, might be carrying the same wound she was. But the question that kept circling, refusing to land, if Park had orchestrated tonight's attack, why target her? She had only just arrived in this world. She had no power here. No history. Unless someone already knew why she had really come. If he hadn't shielded her tonight, this story ends here. No chapter 4. No answers. No justice. Don't miss the moment everything changes. Subscribe now, because what gets uncovered next will make tonight look like a warning shot. And if you're not subscribing yet, drop a comment and tell me why, because I genuinely want to know what's holding you back. The signature stopped her cold. Simone had been at the desk in the mansion's private study for 4 hours straight, laptop open, 3 separate encrypted financial databases pulled up side by side, a yellow legal pad covered in handwritten notes beside her coffee cup that had gone cold an hour ago. She had been tracing shell corporations the way she once traced money through corrupt law firm accounts back in Atlanta. Patient. Methodical. One thread at a time. The thread had led her somewhere she was not prepared for. The corporation was registered in Delaware, a state where anonymity was cheap and questions were discouraged. On paper it was a real estate holding group with modest filings going back 28 years. Nothing unusual. Nothing that would make an auditor blink twice. But the Delaware registration connected to a secondary LLC in Nevada. And that Nevada entity had made 3 wire transfers in a single week, 26 years ago, 1 month before her mother testified in that downtown Los Angeles courthouse. 2 of the transfers were operational expenses. Standard formatting. Forgettable. The third was not. It was labeled simply, resolution fee. Simone's hand went still on the mouse. She had seen that language before. Not in a financial document. In a handwritten note her aunt had kept folded inside a Bible for 2 decades, a note that had arrived at their house 3 days before her mother died. Her aunt had never explained it. Had only told Simone, once, when Simone was grown and asking hard questions, there are men who use clean words for dirty things. She pulled the signatory record. The name at the bottom of the authorization was not Han Jae-min's father. It was Park Sung-ho. The room tilted slightly. Not physically, but the way reality tilts when something you have believed for years turns out to be the wrong shape entirely. Simone sat back in the chair. She looked at the screen for a long time without moving. Her throat tightened. Her eyes burned, Not from crying. From the specific, devastating effort of not crying when everything inside you is collapsing. 26 years of grief. 26 years of quiet rage aimed at a family she had assumed was responsible. 26 years of believing that Korean organized crime, Jaemin's world, his blood, had silenced her mother. Park had done it. Park had ordered the resolution. Park had cleared the witness. Park had dissolved the case, seized influence inside the syndicate while suspicion fell on Jaemin's father, and then, 2 years later, when Jaemin's father was killed in that parking garage off Wilshire Boulevard, Park had stepped into the vacuum without a single person connecting the two events. He had killed her mother to protect his own position. He had killed Jaemin's father to expand it. One man. Two families. A quarter-century of damage. She printed the documents. Every page. She stacked them clean and carried them down the hall. Jaemin was in the main room, standing at the window with a glass of water, watching the Pacific the way he often did late at night, like the ocean owed him something and he was still waiting on payment. He turned when he heard her footsteps. She set the documents on the table in front of him without a word. He read. She watched his face. His expression did not shatter. Men like Jaemin did not shatter in front of other people. But something behind his eyes, some tightly held, deeply buried thing, moved. His jaw tightened. His breathing slowed to that controlled, deliberate pace she had learned meant he was containing something enormous. He reached the third page. His hand pressed flat against it. He killed your mother, she said quietly. Jaemin looked up. His voice came out low. Almost a whisper. And my father. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. The ocean moved outside. The house held its breath. They were not allies by contract anymore. They were not strangers bound by a strange transaction. They were two people standing on opposite sides of the same wound, and the wound had the same name. I want to expose him publicly, Simone said. The gala in downtown Los Angeles next week. Political donors, executives, every power broker in his circle will be in that room. We take the floor. We present everything. In front of all of them. Jaemin's eyes sharpened. That fractures the syndicate. Yes. It puts both of us in direct danger. We're already in danger. He studied her. The lamplight caught the angle of her face, steady, certain, unyielding. Not reckless. Decided. He said nothing. He walked back to the window. And that silence was its own kind of answer, because Jaemin had spent his entire life choosing control. Choosing strategy over emotion. Choosing the empire over everything else. But for the first time in 26 years, control and justice were pointing in opposite directions. Some people would burn the empire down for the truth. Others would bury the truth to protect the empire. Which one would you choose? Drop your answer in the comments, because only subscribers will see what Jaemin decides to do when that gala night arrives. Park Sung-ho was already at the podium when Simone walked in. The Meridian Ballroom in downtown Los Angeles was filled to capacity, 300 guests, crystal glassware, black tie everything. The Korean American Business Coalition's annual charity gala. Politicians who ran Sacramento. Tech founders who owned blocks of Austin and Seattle. Investors whose names appeared on buildings in Century City and Brentwood. This was Park's room. He had spent 30 years building it, funding it, and positioning himself at its center. He stood at the podium with the easy confidence of a man who believed the evening was already decided. He had not seen Simone yet. She moved along the left side of the ballroom in a deep burgundy gown, her natural hair pinned back, a slim leather portfolio tucked under one arm. She did not look left or right. She moved like she had a destination, because she did. Jaemin entered from the east corridor exactly 4 minutes after her. He wore a black suit. No tie. He exchanged brief nods with two men near the bar, then positioned himself 12 feet from the stage, hands loose at his sides, watching Park the way a person watches something they have already decided to end. Park was midway through his opening remarks, generous language about community investment, about legacy, about his vision for the coalition's next decade, when Simone reached the event coordinator near the stage steps. She said 3 words. "I need the microphone." The coordinator blinked. "Ma'am, we have a program." After his remarks, she held the woman's gaze. 1 minute. That's all. Something in her tone, not loud, not aggressive, just absolutely immovable, made the coordinator step aside. Park finished to applause. He smiled, the kind of smile built from years of practice. He was stepping back from the podium when Simone stepped forward. The room stirred. He saw her. His smile didn't disappear, it recalibrated. He moved to the side with the relaxed grace of a man who believed he could manage any situation. Simone set the portfolio on the podium. She looked out at the room. Calm hands. Steady breathing. Her voice came through the microphone clean and unhurried. 3 weeks ago, a motorcade was hit on Pacific Coast Highway. Gunfire. 3 injuries. She opened the portfolio. The route had been leaked 48 hours before the attack. I have the communication records. She lifted the first page. I also have wire transfer documentation from a Delaware holding company, 26 years old, authorizing the death of a federal witness. A woman named Claudette Brooks. She paused. My mother. The room went very quiet. The authorization signature belongs to the man who just stood at this podium. She turned and looked directly at Park. The same signature appears on the financial records that funded last month's attack on Pacific Coast Highway. For 2 full seconds, Park did not move. He stood with his champagne glass angled in one hand, his expression cycling through options, denial, outrage, control, and landing on none of them convincingly. Then he moved toward her. Fast. Direct. The practiced composure gone. He crossed 6 feet before Jae-min stepped in front of him. No raised voice. No visible threat. Just a man standing between Park and the woman at the podium, feet planted, eyes level, expression carved from something that did not bend. You betrayed blood, Jae-min said. Soft. Final. The way verdicts sound when there is no appeal. Park's mouth opened. Nothing useful came out. 2 men appeared at Park's shoulders, men the room had assumed were coalition security. They were not coalition security. They escorted him toward the side exit without a single word spoken above a murmur. No scene. No spectacle. Just a door opening and closing. The room fractured into noise, voices layering over each other, phones appearing, people turning to the people beside them with wide eyes and urgent whispers. Simone stood at the podium and watched it happen. She did not smile. Her shoulders dropped half an inch, not from relief. From the specific weight of something long carried finally being set down. She looked across the room. Jae-min was already looking at her. Not the way he had looked at her in Newport Coast. Not calculating. Not contained. Something older than strategy was in his expression now, something worn through to its real shape by the kind of night that strips everything unnecessary away. It was not victory on his face. It was the beginning of something neither of them had a word for yet. The war was over in public. The room had witnessed it. The documents were already being photographed, forwarded, discussed in real time across every table in that ballroom. But standing in that room, watching Jae-min turn quietly toward the exit, Simone understood something that the documents hadn't told her. Winning and healing are not the same thing. And the cost of tonight, what it had taken from both of them to reach this moment, had not finished being counted yet. Was what happened tonight justice, or calculated destruction? Drop your honest take in the comments. If you've ever watched power mistake itself for permanence, you already know how this feels. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next story on this channel will hit just as hard, and you don't want to be the last one in the room to know what happens next. 3 months after the gala, the name Park Sung-ho had vanished from every document, every board seat, every coalition membership that had carried it. In their world, that kind of disappearance was not absence. It was a verdict. The kind that left no room for appeal and no forwarding address. The syndicate did not collapse. It restructured, quietly, deliberately, the way anything built on a cracked foundation restructures when someone finally decides to fix it properly rather than work around it. Jae-min moved 3 key operations into legitimate enterprise. A clean energy investment group in Austin that created 200 jobs by spring. A tech incubator partnership in Seattle that backed 4 minority-owned startups in its first quarter. The money moved differently now. Cleaner. Slower. With more paperwork, which Simone reviewed personally, because that had been written into the contract on page 22, and she had not forgotten. She sat on the advisory board. Not as decoration. Jae-min had announced it himself, in a meeting with 12 men who had spent their careers making decisions without women in the room. Not one of them challenged it. Because Jae-min did not announce things as suggestions. He was different now. Not soft, that was not the word and it was never going to be the word. But where he had once made decisions from behind a wall of controlled silence, he now sometimes sat across from Simone and listened first. Asked questions he didn't already know the answers to. Adjusted. It was not a dramatic transformation. It was something quieter and more permanent, like a door that had been sealed for years, finally left open. On a Tuesday evening in late April, Simone stood on the balcony overlooking the Pacific. The sun was going down in long orange sheets across the water. She had a cup of tea she wasn't drinking, a test result she had been carrying in her coat pocket for 2 days, and a conversation she had been rehearsing since Monday. She heard the glass door slide open behind her. Jae-min stepped out. He stood beside her, looking at the water. He didn't speak first. He had learned, over these months, that sometimes she needed a moment before she was ready. She reached into her pocket. Placed the folded paper on the railing between them. He looked at it. Then at her. She didn't explain it. She watched his face. He picked it up. Read it. Read it again. The Pacific kept moving below the cliffs, indifferent as always, enormous as always. A seagull crossed the darkening sky somewhere to the left. Jae-min, who had built an empire with controlled hands, who had made men twice his size go quiet with a single look, who had buried his father and his grief and his capacity for softness all in the same decade, lowered himself to one knee on the balcony floor. He was not proposing. The contract had already made them legal. He was not performing. There was no one watching. He simply could not stand up anymore under the weight of what he felt. His head dropped. One hand pressed against the balcony rail for steadiness. He breathed, rough, uneven, nothing like the measured breathing she had come to associate with him. Simone looked down at him for a long moment. Then she rested her hand on the back of his head. Light. Steady. He had built his life believing love was leverage, a weakness to be avoided, a door that let danger in. He had been right, in the way that a person is right about fire being dangerous while still needing warmth to survive. Love had not weakened him. It had required him to become someone worth the inheritance he was about to leave behind. That night, after the balcony and the silence and the dinner neither of them could fully eat, Rel appeared at the study door with a tablet and an expression that was carefully composed, which Simone had learned meant the news was not simple. Unusual financial movement. Offshore accounts. A routing pattern that matched structures they had seen before, but the originating name was new. Unknown. Connected to an address in Seoul that tied to no public record. Someone new was watching. Someone who had been watching, Rel believed, for longer than any of them knew. Jae-min took the tablet. Read the report. Said nothing for a full minute. Then he looked at Simone across the room. She already had her legal pad. Already had her pen uncapped. Ready. In a world built on blood, can love end the cycle, or has it only just begun? If this story reached you tonight, don't let the next one pass you by. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Every story here is built to make you feel something real, think something new, and leave you with something worth carrying. Share this with someone who loves a story that goes all the way. Drop a comment and tell us, would you have chosen power, or love? And if you're still on the fence about subscribing, tell me why. Your voice matters here, and so does your story.